Welcome to the Combot Collective.
Hello everybody and welcome to our 7th episode of Robot Combat tonight. Lucky number 7 here at the Combot Collective, bringing everything you want to know from the world of Robot Combat, from the heavyweight class to the flyweight class, from Battlebots to the live circuit. And today, Robot Combat tonight, lucky number 7. And of course, makes sense. We are talking about Vegas Robot Combat. I'm your host, as always, Sterling Brown, aka Sterling TXTG on Instagram, Corey300 on Instagram and Reddit. Very big sports day for me. I got my, check it out, hard to see with everything in the way. I got my Nippon Ham Fighters jersey in the mail. The Dallas Stars have been doing good. The Rangers have been doing good. SwitchBack's eliminated, so that's a bit of a bummer. But yes, a lot to talk about here today, and I am very excited about this one. Like I mentioned, Battlebots is a World Championship playoff. It's already under full swing. NHRL, RCE finals, they have already went down. And Battlebots Proving Ground has really been getting some steam. So you know what? That's where we're going to start here today at Robot Combat tonight. Opener time. Let's talk about it. Let's not waste too much time jumping into it. We'll get into our sponsor bit later on in the episode. Battlebots Proving Ground. Fights have been confirmed. The event's officially underway, and some fights have already happened. You know, as we discussed actually on a video posted earlier today on the YouTube page if you're watching it live, not only is Battlebots Proving Ground officially confirmed, as I mentioned, we're already going with it. We've gotten exciting news from Battlebots, exciting news from Las Vegas Combat Robotics, and from some various other sources, and we've pieced together quite an exciting series of matches to share with you guys. Well, shared with some of you guys. If you want to know about these fights in proper detail, please check out the YouTube link, which we should have in the corner. If not, check it out on our YouTube page. It is everything we know about Battlebots Proving Ground. But yes, like I mentioned, some of these matches have already kicked off. 2 of them, in fact, during the 6th and 7th of May. It was the, we saw our first 2 Battlebots hopefuls enter the Battlebox in front of hundreds of fans during the Destructathon show that day. They were treated to Mammoth versus Overkill, but they were also treated to the University of Arizona's Disarray, a robot which has gotten quite a bit of solid press lately from here, Battlebots, and some other areas, taking on Patera Dominator, a robot from Bob Niemeyer, originally the builder of the Loach, back in Battlebots 2009. This was a very interesting series of matches. Like I mentioned in that video, they fought once on Saturday the 6th, once on Sunday the 7th. Both of them very destructing outings for Disarray. They have moved up the TCC rankings. They've picked up 2 knockouts already. A great way to kick off a robot's career. But that's the only fight that has happened. The only matchup that has happened. I guess there's multiple fights. That's not it. Like we mentioned in that Proving Grounds video, there are more exciting matches, which despite being subject to change, we are very excited to see moving forward. Going through them briskly here. Happening, probably already happened by the time this video is out on YouTube. If you're watching it live, this is happening tomorrow. May 13th to 14th, Slammo versus Doom, Battle of the Alternates from last season. May 27th through 28th, Banshee, a robot which just missed the top 32, taking on a brand new robot, Snakebite. June 3rd through 4th, very unique designs right here. Horizon, another robot which barely missed the top 32 cut this season, taking on Doom. Once again, Team APT, they are right by the arena. They're trying to capitalize on as much as they can. June 24th through 25th, the Egg-Beater robot Atomic Puppy is going to be taking on our defending RoboGames 2023 champion Manta. July 1st through 2nd, Comedy Central era robot Maximum Paralysis returns to Robot Combat for the first time in 20 years, and they're going to be taking on a brand new robot that we know little to nothing about named Travis T. And then at some point in July, like shared by Las Vegas Combat Robotics with us, we posted it on social media, Gigabyte versus Jackpot. It's still apparently supposed to happen sometime in July. Of course, as we know with these Robot Combat live events, things are subject to change, so maybe they're looking for different opponents for these robots. Maybe they're looking for, a different date to do it. Maybe they're having cold feet on having 2 veteran robots fight one another, but we'll just have to see how it goes down. Those are all the fights, as of right now, accounted for. with Battlebots Proving Ground. All of them will be factored into our TCC overall rankings. And since I have no co-host, let me ask you guys, the commenters, the listeners, everyone that's enjoying this video, the live stream, what match out of all these are you guys looking forward to? Is it Slammo Doom, Banshee Snakebite, Horizon Doom, Manta Atomic Pumpkin, Maximum Paralysis Travesty, Gigabyte Jackpot? Well, for me personally, I gotta go with Manta here. Now, apparently the robot it's taking on, Atomic Pumpkin, is also an egg beater drum style robot. So it's going to be Crazy Drum versus Crazy Drum, hopefully. We know little to nothing about Atomic Pumpkin, but I am very hopeful to see what this robot can do. It's certainly a tough draw. I mentioned that in the Proving Ground video. It is a really tough draw for this brand new robot that none of us have even seen before. Barely any of us even knew existed as of a week ago. Taking on a robot which has literally decimated Battlebots level competition already. We've seen what this robot did against the likes of Malice, Mad Catter, Terratops, even the own RoboGames Arena itself. This thing is insane. It is reliable. I'm sure the issues that they had worked out against Hexadecimator have been fixed. And it looks very solid. Obviously, Disarray has a lot of buzz right now after destroying Terra Dominator in back-to-back fights. But I really do feel like that robot from Arizona is on a little bit of a back foot, having to be, you know, a second Ray-themed heavyweight robot from Arizona this year compared to Manta, a robot with championship pedigree, a robot which is already number 2 on the TCC overall rankings. Credit to Disarray, it is 16th overall, but it ain't no number 2. Other interesting things here. We're going to be seeing a lot of Doom over this summer, as we already mentioned, May 13th through 14th, June 3rd through 4th, and I'm sure that's far from it for Alejandro Pena. Very excited to see what that robot can do, because the limited action we saw it have during RoboGames in the fights against Hexadecimator, Whiplash, Chaos 3, Bullion, it wasn't the most impressive robot, but it's a fun concept. It's like Beta and Saw Blaze having this crazy bastard child. And I really look forward to see what this robot can do in the future. But we're not going to spend too much time on Proving Ground. Like I mentioned, we did just post a whole 18-minute video on Battlebots Proving Ground. So if you really want the nitty-gritty, some footage of all these robots in action and the fights themselves, please check out the video, the TCC news video right now on our channel. Just look for the yellow warning stripes on the side. But hey, there's more to talk about here, guys. We got to talk about NHRL May and the RobotCombatEvents.com finals. Obviously not heavyweight action, but still something fun here. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about these events, these two big-time events happening in early May. Norwalk's May the Bots Be With You event, RobotCombatEvents.com's League Finals in Seattle, which was essentially an invite-only competition. NHRL went down the 5th. Robot Combat's League Finals went down from the 5th to the 7th, so a weekend full of action. And after hundreds of exciting fights from coast to coast, robots from all around the world competing, we have our results from these two events. First, from the NHRL main competition, which we covered very much in depth on the Amidst the Havoc stream last week. 3 classes, all with the top 3, and an extra finals qualifier added in. It's the usual groups at NHRL, Beetleweight, Hobbyweight, and Featherweight, and some very big names here. Let's start off with the bread and butter in NHRL, that Beetleweight class. In first place from Tommy Wong, a robot which has not shown up at NHRL in reportedly 3 years. It won the last time it appeared, and it won this time undefeated, if I remember correctly. Droopy, the crazy robot, no wheels in this machine, 2 1-pound blades making up the offense of this machine. It is impressive, and the robot have beaten the finals from Glenn Voxel, Caldera. We see this robot go deep into the tournament during the April 2022 event. I believe it has made the NHRL finals before. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they have officially made it this time. Caldera with one of the most impressive mini-bots in the field. Taking third place here, here's another NHRL veteran that we just see compete at every single event, not giving up on anything. Fully defined, kind of similar to Clyde, the flamethrower robot, which is already qualified for the finals. 2 big, long forks up front. That vertical spinner. Not the most powerful vertical spinner, but still, you know, a solid vertical spinner. This is a very reliable robot. made it far to this tournament for a reason, but it was not the only vertical spinner to qualify for the finals. That's our top 3. But placing 4th, this is a fun new one, Synthesis, which was a 3-pound homage to the NHRL 30-pound annual champion Emulsifier. They did very good, turned some heads, got some massive knockout wins against robots they should not have been able to beat. That was a star-making performance for Synthesis. Only upwards for that vertical spinning Emulsifier club. But what happened in the hobbyweight class? Well, from 4th place, 3rd place to 2nd place, it was all Team Defective, a team that seems to have a death grip on the hobbyweight class right now. 4th place is the 12-pound version of Voxel, a robot which I predicted to finish first in the NHRL March event. Unfortunately, wasn't so lucky here. Did better this time. 3rd place, Carbon, the exact same spot I finished at Motorama 2023 earlier on in the year. 2nd place, Crunk in its debut event. I believe this was the one driven by Zach, the captain of Team Defective. It looked very solid here, compact, destructive, very reliable. But Carmen and Crunk went down to a common opponent during this competition. With all these vertical spinners dominating in hobbyweights like we always talk about, it was a breath of fresh air to see who won this. Coming from the University of Cincinnati, Maximizer. I always gush over the Thagamizer style of robots. I believe in past After the Havoc podcast episodes we've done here on the Combot Collective, I have talked about Minimizer and Maximizer in the past. It's such a fun design. The tail style, almost like a Twackbot horizontal spinner hybrid with a machine like Maximizer. It's such a fun design. Looks great. I want to see a heavyweight Thagamizer style robot in the future. But for now, we'll sell for first in this one. Maximizer, hobbyweight, 12-pound champion in May. They're going to the finals. And finally, in the featherweight class, 30 pounds, first place would go to a robot which is already qualified for the NHRL finals this year. A robot which has yet to miss an NHRL event this year as well. Kablooey Tango. Like I mentioned on the NHRL live stream I did, essentially the hybrid of Hot Leaf Juice and Valkyrie, driven by Lucy Dew, given to her, or say built by her to pretty much sharpen her own blade with making herself a better driver for Valkyrie, and I think she's definitely done that. Great performances at both the January and May competitions. Obviously, they got first place here. Hard to do better than that. That's really going to help Lucy Dew if she does drive Valkyrie in 2023 for World Championship 8. But we got more big-time horizontal spinners here. 2nd place from Team WPI, the Undercutter Waddles, another undercutter. It was an undercutter on undercutter finals in the 30-pound class. These guys have already qualified STF, so this was their new horizontal spinning project to try to get qualified, and they did it on their first try. Shouts to the Team WPI Robotics guys. In 3rd place, coming from Ireland, Team Immersion, one of the best 30-pound teams in the world. Kitchen Grill, a 30-pound homage to Double Barbecue, the legendary heavyweight from King of Bots. And in 4th place, in my opinion, the story of the event, qualifying the only robots maybe to qualify from Brazil all year, given what we heard about AGVS. You know who we're talking about here. Rato, Shibata, the Robo-Rat himself. Arguably one of the biggest online celebrities we've seen hop into the sport in some time. This was just an awesome story here. Shibata, the horizontal spinner, and knocked out Lil Rip in the qualifying match to qualify for the NHRL finals. Placed 4th overall. Robo-Rat, Rato Borrachado, whatever his name is, the famous YouTube influencer in Brazil that's doing so much for the sport right now. He's helping him a lot. I love it. I can't wait to see Shibata in November. Hopefully he brings a whole contingent of Brazilian fans with him. And then also qualifying, even though it didn't make it out of the top 8, but because Kablooey Tango, a robot which is already qualified, did place here, Lil Rip, the baby Ripperoni, the 30-pound Ripperoni, which was driven by Anna Zolnikov this event, also qualified. So, running over forever champions for NHRL one more time. Beetleweight, first place, Droopy. Hobbyweight, first place, Maximizer. Featherweight, first place, Kablooey Tango. Story of the event, Rato Borrachado with Shibata. Very exciting stuff here. We got to see all that NHRL event in full, but one event we sadly didn't get to see in full. No stream to my knowledge. In fact, they've only recently posted highlights of it on the West Coast. The Robot Combat League Finals. Very excited for this. Like we mentioned, 5 classes, but 0 streams, sadly. And here's the results we have in the featherweight class. Root Mean Square took first place, coming from my boys at Team Dark Forces in second place. Dark Bullet, the only Team Dark Forces robot to place in top 3 in any class, sadly. Third place, Jolly Rancher. In the Antway class, first place, Dulce de Lucha. Never heard of this robot, but I love the Lucha name. And YO Robotics, once again appearing in one of these videos. They're just so dominant. I can't wait to see these guys maybe appear on Battlebots one day. Second place, the very unique Shuffling Undercutter Mud Skipper. Third place, the Control Bot Super Space Turtle. And then in the Beataway class, I foretold you guys, I'm not trying to say I'm Alpha Cephas or anything, but I can make a couple prophecies. I can call some stuff. First place is Lynx. I mean, we all call that. Calvin Eba's killer 3-pound machine went on a predictable 6-0 run to the top. This is their second Beataweight Championship won, and they have yet to even appear at NHRL this year. Oh my goodness. Second place was Firecracker. Third place from my boy Nate Franklin, representing the state of Pennsylvania, Thunderchild, former Battlebots grand finalist. I'm so excited to see him make a high placement in another very popular tournament. In the 12-pound hobbyweight class, we saw Quicksilver take first place. From David Small and Team Small Robotics, Son of Cram takes second place, a much better outing than what it had at Motorama 2023. And then in third place, Sling Blade. And then finally, in the 30-pound class, 30-pound sportsman class, I should say, no big spinners, no big flippers here. Only control bots, lifters, small flippers, pushers. You know how it goes. We talked about this kind of stuff with Motorama. La Machine, who I stated before this event, probably the best sportsman have at featherweight in the world right now. Only second place in a 4-bot field. Color me a little surprised. Third place went to Storm Rider, the 30-pound version of Claw Viper. But first place went to Grill Master. Shouts to Grill Master. Shouts to all of our winners here. We'll go over them one more time. First place in Ferryweights, Root Mean Square. First place in Antweight, Dulce de Lucha. First place in Beataweight, as we all predicted, Lynx. First place in Hobbyweight, Quicksilver. First place in the 30-pound sportsman class, Grill Master. There's a lot of champions here that I just straight up don't recognize. If I can be brutally honest here, looks like I got to do a little bit of homework on these small robots that are fighting on the West Coast, because I'm a little bit ignorant to some of these machines. But there we go. That wraps up all of our non-televised housekeeping get done. We know our winners in Seattle, we know our winners in Las Vegas, and we know our winners in Norwalk. But once again, let's get to what we're all here to talk about. Battlebots World Championship Playoffs. And it has been a doozy. This episode may have been even better than the last one. We saw an excellent field of robots appear last week. Some great machines. Plenty of not really many upsets. We saw most of these upsets come this week on this episode. 5 of our 8 matchups, the lower seed won, but we did see all the vertical spinners dominate on that half of the bracket. And looking at this end of the bracket, just kind of going over everything here, I believe, and maybe I'm wrong here, outside of Hydra and Malice, looks like vertical spinners are still dominating. Only 2 vertical spinners left in the field in Hydra and Malice. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. The first fight on the episode yesterday, or a few days ago if you're watching this on YouTube, was number 12 versus number 21 seed. 21, lucky for some. Ripperoni versus Black Dragon. And of course, if you're going to talk about Ripperoni, you got to talk about our sponsors here at the Combot Collective, robotsruinmylife.com. They are the merchandise provider for numerous East Coast teams in the world of robot combat. From, robots that we've seen at NHRL lately, machines from Omega Team, machines from Shredded Bro. We're talking about the likes of Axis of Evil, Starchild, Blackbird, the original 3-pound Shredded Bro, Wake and Bake, all the usual regulars we talk about here, and of course the 3 Battlebots competitors, Shredded Bro, Starchild, and Ripperoni, who we're going to be talking about here in just a second. All these machines, plus more, have merchandise on robotsruinmylife.com. So if you're looking up your robot combat collection, whether it be with merchandise, with t-shirts, jackets, maybe you want to get some more poker chips, maybe you want to get something unique like the Ripperoni pizza box or the Robots Ruin My Life tote bag, which we've given away on the channel before, well, robotsruinmylife.com is the place you want to go. Check it out in the link below. You can kind of see the website right here. Great presentation, Great people running the website. Awesome print company behind it. You got to check these guys out. RobotsAreInMyLife.com, the official sponsor of the Combot Collective. And unfortunately, them Ripperoni shirts may be going on sale after this. Let's talk about this fight. Ripperoni entered this one, the higher seed, 3-1, with its sole loss to Gruff, which, quite frankly, nobody remembers after the shock victories it picked up against Endgame and Copperhead. Likely the 2022 Rookie of the Year for Battlebots. Taking on 21st seed here, like I mentioned, lucky for some, Black Dragon, who is 2-2 with losses to the Crusher Quantum, and then around 4, the historic loss against Riptide, where they lost their knockout against streak. I'm sorry, their not knocked out streak, I guess is the best way to put it. Entered the playoffs with their lowest seed that they've ever had for a tournament, but you can't kill the spirits of Team Warrior. Ripperoni would show up into this fight looking as how we've seen it versus every single vertical spinner it's faced this year, featuring that heavy front wedge because, as they mentioned, Anna mentioned, that little wedge was apparently just not holding it up against anyone, not even Gruff. Meanwhile, Black Dragon brings out a brand new configuration with huge homages to Mono Duck, their lucky mascot, a mallard mast up front with 2 long forks sticking forward in the shade of green, plus that egg beater disc which we saw last round. It was a big spinner with minimal strategy taking on a small spinner with oceans of strategy. And Ripperoni's reach owned the opening minute of this fight. Massive hits to Black Dragon, evenly juggling the small robot a couple of times during this fight. But you know what? Fuck, man. I guess commentator's curse does also exist in Battlebots, because as soon as Kenny Florian mentioned how stable Ripperoni was in this fight, not even a second later, that damn gyroscopic interior flywheel would quit working, and Ripperoni would start wobbling around a little bit. It was still dominating the fight up to this point, but it was looking a little bit shaky. But once, a little bit around 1 minute, 15 seconds left in the fight, Ripperoni lost that exposed motor, and things would go from bad to worse here for Omega Team against the now weaponless Black Dragon. Weaponless at this point in the fight, as despite being on fire, and I mean seriously on fire, shades of RIbbot versus Black Dragon in 2020, the Brazilian Beast, in typical Team Uriah fashion, would just keep on going, while Ripperoni's complex design began to falter, began to slow down in the final minute, with visible drive problems in that smaller wheel beginning to spur up, and shit, man. My sponsor went down in heartbreaking fashion. Ripperoni was dead with just 33 seconds left on the clock, and it would be counted out with 3 seconds left on the clock. A knockout victory for Black Dragon, pulling off the remarkable comeback in 2 minutes and 57 seconds. But personally, maybe this is a little bit of bias on my end. I can't help but wonder if Ripperoni was moving. I mean, it was like twitching. Maybe it wasn't translational in the movement enough, or maybe because it was on the upper deck, it got counted out. I mean, regardless, was looking in pretty tough shape, but I believe if it did go to 3 minutes, this would have been Ripperoni's win. But I digress. A very solid, very impressive robot in Black Dragon moves on. Very proud of our sponsor, one of our sponsored robots in Ripperoni, though. It's easily going to be viewed as Rookie of the Year at Battlebots this season. Not one new robot besides Ripperoni made the round of 32 this year, and boy, I am excited to see this robot in the Golden Bolt tournament. I am ready to see this machine punt some alternates. But as for Black Dragon, though, as the team said, praise Lucky Ducky. The Brazilians now head into a rematch of one of the sport's wildest fights in recent memory during the round of 16, RIbbot versus Black Dragon. Can't wait for that, but we'll talk more about it later. Just one more shout here to Ripperoni. I love this robot. I love Anna Zolnikov. I love the commitment Frederick Moore made to being the pizza chef. Just great to see him in action. I cannot wait to see more of Ripperoni, and we're still going to get a lot of Ripperoni this year. Real Rip's going to be competing all around the U.S. likely. We're going to see them at the NHRL Finals. That's confirmed. So a lot more Anna and Fred for your buck this year. Stay tuned for more Robot Combat and more TCC. We can't wait to talk about those folks. Moving on here. Brit Vert Showdown, 9th seed versus 24th seed. Cobalt versus Monsoon. And I think we were all excited about this fight when we looked at the card, saw how the bracket laid out. Two very similar robots, but I don't think anybody could have predicted this result. Cobalt with Team Carbide on yet another road to the Triple Crown. It has been dominant as usual. 3-1 with a Fight of the Year candidate versus Minotaur being its only loss, and just a few different turns. And this fight may have been different. Maybe Cobalt would have been 4-0. It took on Monsoon at 2-2 with no appeals remaining after tough losses to both Black Dragon and Whiplash. Always kind of known for vertical spinner reliability woes, but in its last two fights, these seem to have been resolved. This is far from the Monsoon we've seen at Extreme Robots and Battlebots 2019 in the past. It seems pretty solid. Let's see how it went here, though. Plenty of wedge game entering this fight. Monsoon had two long forks, which were set up to be, aimed forward no matter which angle Monsoon was facing, whether it got flipped over or not. And they also had that signature Monsoon blade. Cobalt, meanwhile, had the same 4-fork combo we saw it used last during that fight against Lucky. Along with the skull, Cobalt's heaviest of his weapons, coming in at 45 pounds. Very deadly vertical spinning mass. And in our pre-fight strategy, Tom Brewster made it very clear that Team Monsoon needed to take off those front wedges if they wanted to win the ground game. And execute their strategy they did. This was fantastic here by Tom Brewster. Some excellent offense and control from Cobalt to kick off the fight. But once Monsoon was able to get one of those piano key forks off the front of Cobalt, boy, did they have an opening. From here, Monsoon with Tom Brewster behind the sticks delivered some phenomenal driving, some of the best driving I've seen this year. Able to keep itself at the perfect angle to push itself away from the remaining Cobalt forks, keeping all the aggression and control in Monsoon's favor, while they just kept on landing the strikes that Cobalt wasn't able to. Huge impact, strike after strike, getting flipped over multiple times Cobalt was. Lucky this fight didn't end sooner, to be quite honest. So Cobalt managed to survive, but after being stripped down to one fork near the end of the fight, and almost getting sent out of the arena with a massive hit from Monsoon, that strike would knock out Cobalt, leave it dead on its head right in front of the team itself. That's always brutal. And within 1 minute and 48 seconds, the 9th seed was dead, eliminated from the competition. Huge upset, probably the biggest upset of the entire round of 32. Team co-captain, the man behind robots like Concussion and Ragnarok, Tim Rackley, promised to Kiss and Kenny before this fight, apparently, that he knew Tom Brewster would be a better driver than David Moulds, and he knew that he could beat him. And you got to admire Tim Rackley's confidence. He was right. The way Tom Brewster was able to pressure the side of Cobalt's remaining forks, especially those long forks, and just push Cobalt away at the perfect angle to keep winning the ground game, it was wildly impressive. Also wildly impressive was how Monsoon moved in this fight. We finally, of course, Monsoon's gimmick has always been the hinged body with the spinner, so pretty much no matter how it got hit, it could flip right back into position and keep striking, look the exact same. We never really got to see that in action too much, but we certainly got to see it in perfect action here. That was really nice to see. Biggest win of Team Monsoon's career. Tim Rackley was absolutely gracious to both parties here, so much shouts to him. They shocked the world here, man. 95% of the Battlebots pits had Cobalt winning, myself included, my stepfather included with his little bracket. Brackets have been busted, man, and a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people are upset. A lot of perfect brackets got destroyed. I think a lot of fans had a false sense of security after last week's incredibly predictable half of the bracket. We had some mix-up in this one. A lot of upsets, like we mentioned. 5 of the 8 matches here today had the lower seed winning. One match that didn't have the lower seed winning, though, is our classic number 1 versus number 32 showdown with 2 all-star factions behind it. We're talking about Minotaur versus Fusion. So Minotaur, our number 1 seed, 4-0, undefeated with 3 knockouts on the year and multiple Fight of the Year candidates. But perhaps the owner of Fight of the Year candidates, more so than anybody, had have to be our number 32 seed, Team Ayachi's Fusion, who was 1-3 after a tough season with some utterly spectacular fights versus the likes of Emulsifier and Witch Doctor. But those internal fire issues were certainly still present for most of the regular season, and as we see here, they haven't gone anywhere yet. As present, they would continue to be for this one. Minotaur ran a 2-tooth cutting drum with no wedgelets, and Fusion, much the same. No wedges, all weapon. Both of these parties were fully focused on power, and this short and spicy fight certainly proved that. Might have been the fastest fight in the episode. We certainly had a few candidates for it here. And I mean, hey, as Reese Ewart and Kenny Florian said, Good on Fusion for winning the first 5 seconds of this fight. They had that going for it. 2 massive hits to Minotaur set the table for Team Waiachi. But while Minotaur was set on the table, Fusion was set on the kill saw slots, shitting out a weapon band and bursting into flames. And that was it. That was the fight. Not one hit landed by Minotaur on its own. There was one rebound hit. But that's all it really needed to take out Fusion, who proved that they may be the sole reason as to why Battlebots decided to invest in a thermal cam to make up for these crazy Fusion KOs that we've been seeing all year. I will give credit. That lucky KO last week was also pretty exciting. But yeah, Fusion was up in smoke, knocked out in under a minute, and the Brazilians get to move on here with little repair besides maybe a weapon belt. Still not sure which robot that fell off of. The commentary said it was Minotaurs, but I'm not too sold on that. But sadly, the best bout machine in Fusion has, well, bowed out. Reese Ewert cracked us up one more time before he decided to fade away until the Golden Bolt series. Can't wait for more hilarious one-liners from Reese Ewert, and I cannot wait for more stellar fights from this robot. Put it against some big names in the Champions Tournament. I want to see it. I mean, imagine this robot fighting Gruff, you know, something fiery like that, or maybe another undercutter like Rotator or Valkyrie. There's a lot of crazy things that this machine can do. I would absolutely love to see, but we're going to move briskly on forward here. We're keeping a good pace for this episode with no co-hosts. Just giving you guys the meat and potatoes this week. 4th seed versus 28th seed. The leader of this quadrant, Hydra, taking on the underdog, Death Roll. And like we'd see often at Battlebots here, we just had Fusion. This is Hydra. Back-to-back double dips of Waiachi robot action. And talking about Team Waiachi once again with Hydra here. 4th seed, as I mentioned, like we all anticipated with the flipper, maybe working better than ever here. You know, it lost the tantrum in round 2, but the performances we have seen it have versus the likes of Rotator and free shipping show that it is a very solid robot still. In fact, it set the Battlebots flip record with 21 flips during that free shipping fight. This may be the best Hydra yet. Death Roll, meanwhile, maybe the opposite. It's been a story of age for this robot. A robot left in a shipping crate since 2019, waiting for another big moment. It finally had that moment this year, but it's been a tough 2022 campaign at 2-2. And I feel like Death Roll got kind of a low seeding in this tournament. It's maybe too low than it deserves. But Steven, Glenn Rose, and the rest of the guys behind Team Death Roll, they don't back down from a challenge. And Hydra knew exactly what it was getting into, taking on a machine like Death Roll. Hydra came out into this one with their traditional front wedge, but despite their setup, as always, we know Death Roll. They came into this one looking like Death Roll. No wedges, no forks, no wedgelets up front like usual. Just the crazy croc we all know and love with that Australia-shaped blade and that Bowie knife weapon. And, you know, I think despite the lack of ground game, I don't think any of us counted out Death Roll just because of that weapon reach and the fact that Glenn Rose is maybe one of the sport's most underrated drivers. I know I say that for a lot of drivers, but Glenn Rose certainly does fall into that group. But sadly, the writing was on the wall for the whole time for the Australians here. The better seed just won. In a battle of 2019 semifinalists and 2021 semifinalists here, Hydra put up an astonishing 11 flips. 11 flips. But this one was far from a one-sided affair. Death Roll and its weapon would just not die in typical Australian fashion. And with exactly, and I mean exactly, half a fight left here, we would see Death Roll leave quite an indelible image in all of our minds when it stuck that Australian blade right into the side of Hydra, taking out a whale. Very nice strike, like a croc taking a bite out of its foe. This locked up both robots. Unfortunately, Death Roll couldn't do a literal Death Roll here, but it did do some serious damage and forced Battlebots to stop the fight here as Trey Roski and his trusty crowbar had to come in and do an unstick. When both robots were split, finally, I was really hopeful that Hydra may have lost their drive during the impact. They seemed pretty still while Death Roll was lodged in there, while Death Roll was trying to pull away. But this was not the case. Upon restarting the fight, both robots were limping post-impact, but moving. But while Death Roll only had partial drive and no weapon at all, Hydra had partial drive and full weapon. 5 of the 11 flips, in fact, that Hydra pulled off during this fight were after the stoppage, and the power on Hydra's flipper never faltered a bit. In fact, Death Roll hit the ceiling. We finally had it. After 20 years of Battlebots, Death Roll, a robot, has finally hit the Battlebox ceiling. Made official by Team Waiachi after the fight. They're super proud of them for that. A first for the sport's history and another accomplishment on what's been a historic year for Hydra. But credit for Death Roll here at the very end of the fight. They tried using that little knife thingy that's on their Shreemack. They turned their Shreemack all the way open, and they were trying to do like some lariat moves on Hydra, but it was just setting them up for more flips. They did make it the full 3 minutes, as I mentioned. Credit to them, but this would be a unanimous judges' decision victory for Hydra, who's going to jump into a rematch for its next fight. That's going to be pretty exciting. We'll talk about that here in a moment. We're now halfway through our playoff fights this week as we now go to number 5 seed versus number 27 seed, and this was a very exciting fight for us here at the Combot Collective. This is the main reason why I was really hoping I could get some co-hosts this week, but bummer, you know how it goes. Co-host Pory Dog's favorite robot, RIbbot, entering the arena versus co-host Captain Mantine's favorite robot, Quantum, for this excellent round 32 Clash of Styles Spinner versus Crusher. Quantum has always been the spiritual second coming of Razor. It had its first match almost a year after Razor's final match, and we even saw James Cooper FaceTiming the legend himself, Ian Lewis, on social media in the build-up to this one. Quantum's been doing some amazing things at 4-0, unprecedented stuff for a Crusher, but it's probably going to be facing its biggest challenge yet in RIbbot, who despite its low seeding and 1-3 regular seasons should always be looked at as a threat. RIbbot, it's a brick, it's powerful, it has 2 reliable weapon options, and it was even seeded second for last year's playoffs. So in a fight like this, with 2 robots that have everything on the line, 2 big names here, configurations and setups, they're always going to be big. RIbbot brought out the vertical spinner setup for this fight versus Quantum with 7 forks up front, 3 of them long, 4 of them short, and a bit of an odd configuration. I don't know the method behind the forks. It was kind of neat. And Quantum, meanwhile, used the 2 main teeth this time, not 1 big tooth like we've seen in the past. Armed with their traditional front wedge with hinged wedgelets up front, but the team is very aware of what they were jumping into this time. They know their track record with vertical spinners like Double Barbecue and Death Roll in the past. They knew they had to proceed with caution, but right at the start of this fight, Quantum was absolutely gifted a scenario here, with RIbbot getting itself immediately stuck into the kill saws slot seconds into the fight. Big time shades of Ripperoni versus Endgame, but unlike Ripperoni, Quantum just really didn't take full advantage of this scenario at all. They took 1 tentative bite into the back of RIbbot's lid, where it looked as if some anti-crusher armor was placed there by the RIbbot team. Smart by them. But then they just agreed to, quoting the Cooper brothers, "Oh, just leave him there." I don't know why I didn't go for another bite. Why they just leave him there? It seemed like a serious missed opportunity. This has been a real talking point for me this episode, and I'm sure my buddy Mantine, same thing with him. I know he was feeling the pain when I was talking to him this morning. But RIbbot broke free, and from here, it was just showtime for David Jin. Team WPI and RIbbot. Impressive driving and dominated ground game let them take control of Quantum from this point forward, despite Quantum's best attempts. And after 3 big strikes, one of which putting a massive gash into Quantum's underbelly, that was it. RIbbot escaped the crucial mistake and brought it back for a knockout in almost half a fight exactly, 1 minute and 28 seconds. And now, to be fair, this was a brutal matchup for Quantum, no matter how you sliced it. I mean, if I had to, at the start of the season, pick 5 robots who I felt like would be too sturdy for Quantum's Crusher, RIbbot probably would have been one of my first 3 choices. Not even within one of my first 5, one of my first 3. And that's before factoring in the preventive armor, which RIbbot had added to it. That being said, as a big Quantum fan myself, this was a very frustrating thing to see go down. Them just leave RIbbot there on the kill saw slots. And I wonder how the Cooper brothers themselves feel about this fight. I would say I can't wait to see them dominate in the Golden Bolt brackets, but as we learned since I wrote this script, they are not participating in the Golden Bolt tournament. It's a real bummer. They only have 1 more exhibition fight this year, so we're probably going to see them at Vengeance in Vegas. It's sad. It means we're probably done watching Quantum fight until maybe September if we're lucky. We'll just have to see how it goes. RIbbot, though, moves on to relive that fantastic round of 8 match from the 2020 season, the one I mentioned earlier. The fight I call the best cripple fight of all time, and I still stand by that. RIbbot versus Black Dragon 2. I cannot wait for that next week. Total bite time, though, for Quantum this year in 5 fights at Battlebots, 205 seconds. Only 5 seconds, though, of that was contributed here during this one. This was definitely by far the shortest amount of bite time Quantum's had in any of these 5 fights. So bummed that Quantum's out. We got to see this exhibition fight ASAP. I need more Quantum in my heart. But you want to talk about having a broken heart? Let's talk about SwitchBack versus Malice. SwitchBack, the 16th seed, versus Malice, the 17th seed. Sorry, a little under the weather here, guys. The classic 16-17 mid-seed showdown here. 2 3-1 robots, which turned some heads by putting up an impressive record in the regular season with some reasonably impressive weaponry. My hometown boys, Rev Robotics and SwitchBack, really gained some momentum recently during regular season round 4 after that vicious victory it had against Hijinks, literally beheading the robot, bringing it to a 3-1 sophomore season. But Malice, meanwhile, after some good luck and hard work, have pushed their way back to winning ways after a tough start to their season. They're now making their 3rd straight playoff appearance since debuting in Battlebots, and Team Malice had quite the helping hand this weekend. Ray Billings, who showed up to support the crew for this one, operating the pulverizer. Very interested to see if maybe he's going to be sticking on Team Malice for the rest of the playoffs. Could be a good luck charm to get them deep when they take on Minotaur. And Battlebots, yeah, they really jumped into this one here. Not much to say about both of these robots. Malice would run the drumstick here for their 5th straight fight, alongside those bunny ear wedges which debuted this season. And on SwitchBack's end, it looked just like it did versus Hijinks, repping that horizontal spinner plow on the front of the robot. And that plow on SwitchBack, it looked very impressive during that Hijinks fight, but it was pretty much a non-factor here, I hate to say. Not really much for me to add on to this one, besides the fact I am very much bummed. It's only partially because this one killed me inside, I promise. Credit to Rev Robotics here. They tried using some versatility with the arm on SwitchBack, something we haven't seen in a couple of fights, but after that weapon on SwitchBack was dead, less than a minute into the matchup, that robot was pretty much just a tank hoping to kill the horizontal spinner on Malice, and usually, given past fights, that probably would not have been that hard of a task, but as we saw in the Gruff fight at round 4, and as we've seen in Malice fights post the 2022 season, it seems like that weapon is exactly where Bunny Sabriol wants it now. Weapon reliability for Malice is now at an all-time high. Drive chains and weapon chains were coming out of SwitchBack left and right during every minute of the fight. This was just absolutely brutal. I mean, outside of one vicious drive over to kill Saws, this would be a perfect fight driven by David Lau and Malice. So credit to SwitchBack here for surviving and even showing some control near the final minutes, but this would be a unanimous judge's decision here for Malice as they move on to the top 16 for the first time in their Battlebots career. They were top 32 in their debut. They were top 34 last year. Top 16 sounds a little bit better than those two. The Holy Spirit of Ray Billings has brought Malice a victory. It looked great during the season's latter half, and even though Minotaur is going to be quite the tall task for Bunny, Ray, the Army of Davids, and Malice, I rate them higher for this upcoming fight than I would have if Malice and Minotaur were to meet in like week 3 to 5. This robot's looking good. Momentum is 100% on Malice's side. As for SwitchBack, my boys from DFW, Greg Needell, Rev Robotics, D Dallas, the big D still loves you. We'll go ahead and win the Golden Bolt. We'll just win the Golden Bolt. We didn't want the giant nut anyway. Now moving forward here. As you can kind of see, looking at our table set up on the ground here, I forgot to mention it earlier. There's some robots missing that were on my table a couple weeks ago. I have pretty much every robot that I have physical merchandise represented here that's in the playoffs. Well, I had Quantum. Now Quantum's out. We're going to go ahead and move the little razor gripping grappler toy. But, I mean, we got Lockjaw still here. We got Witch Doctor still here. We got Malice still here. I guess we can use that to represent. Spoilers, but Sawblaze is still here. Here's a champion in Bite Force. You know who was also still here? Whiplash. Let's talk about the number 13th seed versus the 20th seed. A battle of old heads here. One team, Team Hertz, comes from the late 90s. Team Fast Electric Robots comes from the early 2000s. But only one can move over to the 2022 top 16. Beta, after a tumultuous 2020 season, has bounced back with some great new changes, with Jason Marston, the man behind Thor, now operating the hammer, different hammer configurations being brought, including that Thor-style hammer, and better ground game. You know, all these factors have pushed this robot to a 3-1 season, plus its second straight 13 seed. And Whiplash, meanwhile, it's felt like it's been on a bit of a downward spiral compared to years past. An incredibly tough first half of the season, and also an incredibly tough Robo games when your only win is against Defender and Doom. Tough year for you. But I'd say Whiplash has really returned to form in these most recent two fights against Monsoon and Tantrum, putting it at seed number 20, its lowest ranking ever for the playoffs. But hey, maybe momentum was on their side here. As Matthew Vasquez said before, week before last, for some reason this robot does better when it's seated lower, and that trend seemed to follow here. There was one catalyst, though, which seemed to really help Team Fast Electric Robotics out, and that was that damn Beta boat mode armor. Oh my god. Yes, that's Beta boat mode configuration return for this fight. A setup which, entering this, was a career 0-3, all knockout losses under its belt thus far. And even though we all know what the definition of insanity is, I'll admit, I was a little impressed with how this setup held together this time, but I still felt like it was a detriment. This boat configuration took on Whiplash's disc/lifter combo, which had one long fork up front built for control. And as we saw in the fights, while the vertical spinner on Whiplash was pretty much the perfect thing for this weird Beta armor setup to counter, that lifter, a very different story. Beta would go 2 for 2 on hammer strikes during this fight, getting both of those attempts right off the bat, striking the top of Whiplash. But as soon as Matty Vasquez got some lifter purchase under Beta, it rammed the hammer bot right into the upper deck screws, throwing John Reed's robot upwards onto the platform with 2 minutes and 40 seconds to go still. But Beta was just not going, and we don't know why, at least as of when I'm recording this. Whether it be a busted link, a flip switch, maybe an issue with the drive or magnets when they interact with the differently textured upper deck flooring. I mean, it could be a lot of things, but I do know one thing, and that is the boat mode armor isn't fully to blame here. We can't put all of our blame on it. I mean, that being said, the configuration is now 0-4 with 4 knockout losses under its belt. Maybe it is time to retire a Beta. Whiplash defeats Beta via knockout in 50 seconds flats, but Beta was not moving after about 20 seconds. This was brutal. Seems like the number 13 seed is still unlucky for some, including Team Hertz here, but man, Jesus, they just need to retire that boat mode setup. I'm so peeved by it. To quote Charles Barkley and Shaq, oh man, we don't want to see this. I really thought its days were numbered when we did the whole discussion on Robot Combat Tonight's first episode, talking with you guys about, you know, what we should do with the boat mode setup. Should it get the kibosh? We were all like, yeah, get rid of it. Well, it's still here. It would have been a completely different fight if the wedge was up front, but we're making do with what we have here. But as for Whiplash, its impressive comeback run continues after a very tough 0-2 start for the robot. I am impressed with Matthew Vasquez's performance in this short fight, all the way down to Whiplash's defensive stance to keep Beta up on deck, just to make sure in case it did start moving. I love it when robots like SwitchBack and Whiplash use that arm almost as like a threat. Like, I dare you to move. I will backhand you. I will stab you. But there we go. That's 7 fights up. One more to go here. Hopefully I don't lose power again. Sawblaze, the 8th seed versus Blip, the 25th seed. Our de facto main event. This was the final fight in the round of 32, and we got a little bit of insight on this fight last week. Both team captains here, Aaron Hill and Jameson Go, seemed confident that they had the secret sauce versus the other machine when they were interviewed by Chris and Kenny in that fun segment, but only one of them could be right here. The favorite entering this fight had to be the number 8 seed in Sawblaze. Dominant as always this year, but its sole blemish was versus Hydra, arguably one of the best flippers in the world. And in fact, up to this point, Sawblaze had yet to win a fight versus a flipper. The match against Toro, a big loss. The match versus Hydra, a big loss. And now it was taking on Blip. Blip, though, it had just been losing to about everything this season. And while it's not been as bad as its counterpart, its sibling Tantrum, the little blue flipper that could has just taken some hard losses versus the likes of Endgame and Huge. while not looking too impressive in their recent fight versus the easy-to-take-on Flipper Banshee either, to be honest. Jameson Go here was looking for some revenge from the 2020 Top 8, where Tantrum shut down Sawblaze like few robots had up to that point, while Aaron Hill was just trying to keep his championship program and team Seems Reasonable Robotics in playoff contention here. So like I mentioned, we knew both of these robots were playing the body game for this one. Blip showed up looking very Zoro-esque, kind of like what it did for the huge fight, with plenty of UHMW armor covering Blip's face, while the front of the robot had 3 piano key wedges and 2 long forks like we've seen on the past with Blip. Sawblaze, meanwhile, had been working on their ground game since the very start of this episode. We saw them chiseling down those 3 long signature forks on Sawblaze during the middle of the show. And as we'd see in this one, with those 3 long forks, those kinds of details, they pay off big in the world of robot combat. Both of these parties knew that the first delivery of offense would probably dictate the pace of this fight, and this is exactly what we saw Sawblaze capitalize on here. It looked like Blip had the better ground game at first, but it just could not land the opening strike to Sawblaze. But within 33 seconds, Jameson Go and Sawblaze managed to find an opening to take as they rammed Blip right into the arena screws near the red square, stunning Blip and bringing down the first 2 hammer saw impacts of the fight. These rocked Blip, kept it unsteady, bent some of that anti-overhead armor upwards, bent one of those front forks on Blip, stunned the Flipper just in general, as Sawblaze would just lay down the law from this point forward. In total, 14 successful hammer straw strikes in 15 attempts here. And just like we thought, given, what the driver said before the fight, Blip had to play defensive for a majority of the matchup. 0 for 2 on flip attempts. The first hit of the fight dictates it here. I mean, Blip would have a couple decent rams and slabs in the second half of the fight, but that category also pretty much just belonged to Sawblaze too. Sawblaze tore the Flipper to pretty much every single corner and wall inside the Battlebox within 3 minutes. Even showed Blip the upper deck at one point. And when it was all said and done, Blip was down 2 forks, a good bit of a blade of armor, but it did make it the full 3 minutes. Signature Blip durability there. This fight went to the judges, not that it mattered. Sawblaze won easily, and it was on to the round of 16 for Jameson Go, who now, after exercising one demon of his past in Aaron Hill with the 2020 playoffs, now must go 2 more years back, and it now must exercise another demon in Monsoon from 2018. Monsoon, of course, the robot which sent Sawblaze packing during that year's round of 16 via a controversial judge's decision. That was really the year Sawblaze burst onto the scene, put itself onto the map, so we were expecting a lot from Sawblaze that year. Just didn't play out. That was also a year before they had the hammer saw, though. It was just a classic Sawbot up to that point. So things have changed big time for both these robots since the 2018 meeting. Super excited for that. 5 years in the making. Meanwhile, Blip finishes a sophomore slump season at 2-3. But mark my words, we've seen this robot do some crazy stuff in the past outside the May season. Just look at Remar's All-Stars. Just look at Blip versus Big Dill last year. I'm seriously thinking about the Rangers too much. I am seriously eager to see what stuff this machine can do during the Golden Bolt series. I want to see it out of the arena before the year's over, and Blip can do it. It has the forward capability. Put it against an alternate like Double Tap or maybe Slammo, something fun that's easy to throw, maybe Doomba. Make it just a big toss. Just throw a robot out like it did versus Big Dill. I want to see it. But there we go. 8 fights up, 8 fights down. And honestly, 16 fights up, 16 fights down, because we are now done with the first round of the Battlebots playoffs. Our Sweet 16 have been decided. And our big winners today, of course, are Sawblaze, who's going to be taking on Monsoon. Whiplash, who's going to be taking on Hydra. Malice is going to be taking on Minotaur. And RIbbot, who's going to be taking on Black Dragon. 3 rematches on that half of the bracket. I mean, of course, we have so much history now built along with Battlebots that there's going to be a lot of rematches like this on episodes, but still very exciting to see. It's going to be a hell of a round of 16. And my pick on my bracket, huge, it's still in the field. In fact, updating y'all on my bracket, I went 25% right, I think, on the first group of fights here. I only had Lucky wrong in episode 1. I thought Lucky would move on to the round of 16. But like many of you guys, I thought Cobalt was going to win. I thought Beta was going to win. That was before I realized that they were going to run boat mode. I thought they would learn from their mistakes. And who else here? I thought SwitchBack was going to win. That was admittedly a homer pick. I thought that was a coin flip fight, and Malice won it. But there we go. We have all of our round of 32 fights in the books. We have our proving ground fights now in the books, at least the first two of them. So, hey, you know, I mentioned it at the start of last week's episode. We didn't get to talk about it because I felt like the episode was going to be long. I was right. It was a bit of a long episode. So we're doing it now to close off our 7th episode of Robot Combat tonight, our 4th TCC overall rankings update. And with Proving Grounds, we now have 79 robots on our rankings so far for the year. So let's jump into some of the notable robots that aren't in our top 10 or aren't honorable mentions. Glitch is still at the dead bottom of our group at number 79 overall, negative 30 points. But robots such as Kraken, Bouillon, and Starchild are not far behind. Fusion, meanwhile, after its playoff loss to Minotaur, falls to number 75 out of 79 robots, the lowest ranked top 32 robot in our rankings. The lowest ranked top 16 robot in our rankings, a robot which is still active, would belong to RIbbot. Negative 4 points, number 43 on the rankings, sitting somewhere in the middle. Talking about Proving Grounds, Terra Dominator is now number 68 overall in the rankings. Disarray, number 16, a very good position for a new robot. And then right in the middle of our list at number 40, dead in the middle, number 40 out of 79, is the British version of Manta from Team Shock, who still sits 38 spots lower than its American counterpart. And speaking of British robots, Eruption sits at number 23, and with Extreme Robots happening later this month, I'd expect Eruption to break into the top 10 very soon, our Extreme Robots title belt holder. And Whiplash, we talked about it a lot this episode. It's worked its way from bottom feeder to the middle of the field. It is now an impressive number 17 in our rankings, helped by not only this fight against Beta, but also the fact my dumbass somehow didn't realize Doom versus Whiplash happened during RoboGames. The fight just somehow escaped my plane of memory. I just didn't remember it happened at all whatsoever. So it gained quite a few points this week. Shoutouts to him, number 17 overall in our rankings. But now, let's get to our TCC 10 overall ranked robots. Some honorable mentions real quick. Number 14 on the bubble, Hydra, could break into the top 5 with a knockout versus Whiplash next week. Number 13, Quantum, has 20 points, and it may sneak back into the top 10 depending on how other robots perform this week, including our number 11 and number 12 ranked robots, Endgame and Copperhead, set to fight each other next week. That's going to be an exciting one. Winner breaks into the TCC top 10. Both of those robots have 20 points. But how? Let's get into the top 10 with 22 points. We got plenty of Mutant Robots merchandise here. Lockjaw, fresh off its big win in the round 32, a comeback victory against Bloodsport. 22 points, number 10. Donald Hudson is feeling pretty good with his robot after what happened in 2021. Number 9, a robot we just talked about, also with 22 points. The only reason why it sits higher than Lockjaw is because of its performance last year. Sawblaze with Jameson Go. 3-1 on the regular season year. Just took out a very game robot in Blip. Probably a better robot than Bloodsport, I'd have to say. They're looking pretty good. Moving up to 24 points, though. Witch Doctor, our number 8 ranked robot. It's going to be taking on Lockjaw. One of those robots will exit the top 10 next week, but one of them will shoot up to number 5. My money's personally on the Galatleys. I think Witch Doctor is going to go deep into this bracket. I'm going to guess top 8. Speaking of robots which have done surprisingly well this year, Malice, number 7 overall. It's still hanging in there, much thanks to its crazy performance at RoboGames under the name White Rabbit. It has 26 points. In fact, our next 2 robots as well, also robots hugely benefited by RoboGames. Malice is at 26 points. Big win over SwitchBack this week with the help of Ray Billings. Number 6, the RoboGames runner-up, Mad Catter, also at 26 points. They are still in the top 16. They're still looking good. They're taking on Huge next week. And as we saw on Road to the Giant Nut, Huge Poon. I mean, hey, who doesn't love a little bit of Huge Poon? I love the censored Mad Catter weapon. I said on Reddit that Battlebots update doesn't even need to edit their picture for this week at the end of the article. They just have it right there set up for them. It's been gifted to my boy Zeta Gator, Andre, over there at Battlebots update. I love to see it. Number 5, though, moving forward here, pretty much everyone in this group is in the top 16 except this one and number 2. Number 5 here, Lucky. 28 points after a very, very impressive RoboGames and Battlebots performance. Sure, Lucky did fall in the round 32 to Hypershock, but after getting so many big knockouts in both RoboGames and Battlebots' regular season, knockouts over the likes of Kraken, Triton, Shredded Bro, able to establish a good rapport for itself here. 28 points into the top 5, but it is in serious danger to fall down because everyone else is pretty much fighting. Number 4, Huge, my pick to win this tournament. This is really where the gap opens up. Number 5, Lucky, was 28 points. Number 4, Huge, is 36 points, almost 10 entire points apart. It's just been good this year. Like what Kenny Florian said last week, there has been no challenges for Huge this year. It has been dominant. And I don't think that dominance is going to stop. I think it's going to break through the Huge Poon and knock Mad Catter out of the TCC 10 next week. We'll have to see how it goes. Number 3, it knocked out Fusion without having to do much this week with 38 points. Tied with number 2, to be honest. Minotaur, very impressive run here by Daniel Freitas, Marco Meggiolaro, and the rest of the RIbbot team. Junior builder for Karaoke there as well. Minotaur has been unstoppable, 5-0 this year. Only one judge decision victory against a very game Witch Doctor. Very proud of RIbbot. They've been as good as usual. You know how that team is. Number 2, Manta, a robot that we're going to be seeing at Proving Grounds later on in the month of June. Coming from Arizona, the U.S. version of Manta here from Team Tanto. 38 points, just like Minotaur. The only reason why it's ranked above Minotaur is the fact that Manta is an event winner. Manta won RoboGames 2023 versus some very game robots such as Malice, Lucky, Mad Catter, Puck, Hexadecimator, the Emperor, Whiplash, Defender, and numerous other machines. It was a great run by Manta. Knocked out Ray Billings' robot Stink Eye. And now they're going to have 2 more fights against Atomic Pumpkin later on in June. I don't know where the Battlebots rankings are going to sit by then. I'm sure by then we're going to be getting ready for the Golden Bolt tournament. But assuming that it win both of those fights by knockout, that's going to move Manta up to well over 50 points. We're going to be talking like 54 points for Manta. That would be insane. But number 1, man, you know who it is. We all know who it is. It's Riptide. They've knocked out everyone. They have 40 points, 5 knockouts, 8 points for each knockout, and they're the best robot in the world right now. Nobody can stand their team, us at TCC included. We've tried to be as unbiased as we can for the longest time, but they just keep putting it together, and there's nothing we can say about it. Not a damn thing. They're just that good. Riptide, our number 1 ranked robot here at the Combot Collective. Let's go them over one more time. Number 10, Lockjaw with 22 points. Number 9, also with 22 points, Sawblaze. Number 8, facing Lockjaw, Witch Doctor, 24 points. Number 7, Malice, 26 points. Number 6, Mad Catter, also with 26 points, but a RoboGames finalist, giving it advantage there. Number 5, Lucky, great at both Battlebots at RoboGames, 28 points. Big gap here from 5 to 4. Number 4, Huge with 36 points. Number 3, Minotaur with 38 points. Number 2, Manta, also with 38 points, but a RoboGames win, giving it the edge. Number 1, Riptide with 40 points. 79 robots in the field, and we're probably going to see that push up to about almost 90 after the upcoming Extreme Robots event. I'm super excited for that. A lot of robot combat to look forward to as next week we talk about the round of 16. Maybe we're going to be talking about Angry Vehicle competition. I know that's sometime this month, but I don't know when. We'll let you guys know when we get closer to the date of the video. You'll see it on our Discord server as we start wrapping it up here at the Combot Collective. Storming here in Texas. Inside baseball, we lost power once during this recording, and I almost lost an hour worth of recording. I would have been dead inside, but I think it's all good. Assuming you're watching this on YouTube right now, it's all good. But yes, that's going to wrap it up here for us at the Combot Collective with Robot Combat tonight. I'm your host, as always, Sterling Brown, a.k.a. Sterling TXTG on Instagram here. Hoping that this episode wasn't short or too sloppy. I am a little under the weather. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully it's not the cold or COVID or something awful. And this is the Combot Collective. If you enjoy what you see here on TCC, join our social media pages. Follow us there on Facebook and Instagram. We post special news features all the time on those pages. All of our video upload news goes there first. It goes there second. All of our giveaway news goes up there. Pretty much everything we post goes on our social media pages one way or another. All of our video upload news goes first, though, on the Discord server. You can also listen to Robot Combat Tonight live every single week on the Discord server. Catch the outtakes, catch the personal comments that don't make the YouTube video, all of that fun stuff. That's always some good listening. We have plenty of Roboteers there, from Team Jackpot to Omega Team to Team ULL, some small bots builders like Team Wormhole, Team Blackbird, Team Shreddit. There's a bunch of guys there, Team Mammoth in the server. So be sure to check it out. Join the server. It's a blast. And, of course, you're watching this on YouTube. Please like the video. Leave a comment giving us your thoughts on the round of 32. Your thoughts on what Proving Grounds match you're most excited about. That's going to be our big question for the week. And if you really, really like it, hey, subscribe. Ring the bell icon. Support the Combot Collective. We're now on the road to 1,000 subscribers, slowly but surely. Thank you, though, so much for watching this episode of Robot Combat Tonight. This is me, once again, Sterling Brown, hoping I wasn't too snuffly or stuffy for this one. The show must go on, and I am tired, Jesus Murphy. And go on it did! We're done here. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time for more TCC stuff. And we'll see you here. And we'll see you here next time for more TCC goodness. Adios!
This was the Combot Collective. Find us on Instagram and Discord.